Dating, relationship, periscope. Man, I have to like check myself before I said that because we're so used to doing the COVID cabal, which we're still going to be doing later tonight. Um, let's jump right into this. Let me get the wine taken care of. So we have a cool lineup of wine today, and we're going to be doing one of the best areas of wine, famous areas of wine in the world. Saving it for the big double header tonight, and that is Chianti. Salman, Cabal's coming after this. So if you want to go do your own thing and chill out, you can jump off for now. We'll do Cabal in probably about 45 minutes. So we got Chianti. Chianti. Such a famous place. Chianti was one of the first places in the world, to actually have a delimitation. And it was actually set up by the Medicis in 1716. So back then, the wine was actually mostly a grape called Canaiolo. So you have the main one there today, Sangiovese, right? But you also have a couple of other local red varietals, such as Canaiolo, Colorino, Mamolo, and yeah, Salmon. We are going to do separate stream for COVID Cabal. So the Chiantis, for a long time, it was Canaiolo, which is a completely different grape. And unfortunately, it wasn't until Baron Ricasoli, he was a guy in the late 1870s. He actually became, I think, Prime Minister of Italy. Baron Ricasoli basically said, hey, look, this isn't how you should be producing Chianti. Okay, you need to use more Sangiovese. And you can have a little bit of white in it because they used to blend white wines, mostly Malvasia, maybe Trebbiano. They would blend some of that with it because that was considered to be, can soften it, and that was it was a common practice. In fact, they still do that in Northern Rhone. So, but he was saying you can't do a lot of that, just a little bit of that, and only for the wines that are going to be drunk in the short term. For the wines that need to be aged longer, then you want to have mostly Sangiovese and maybe a little bit of Canaiolo. So we flipped the proportion. Now the problem was that all that was well and good, but the problem was that you had the usual situation where all the sort of bureaucracy gets overly involved. And basically what happened is that they started to overproduce the yields, and then they did something crazy, you might argue, which is that they expanded in the 1920s the area of Chianti from the classic region to this much, much bigger area. So I'll give you an idea here. So here's the map. So Chianti Classico right here. This is where Chianti used to be made. It's this area between Siena and Florence, right? This little area right here. And they said, well, you know what? We're going to make this Chianti. This is going to be Chianti now. How you like that? This is Chianti. And that wasn't such a good idea because the soil was completely different. Everything was completely different. And basically the wine started to be like shit. And all the producers who wanted to do good stuff were getting screwed by the branding. So what did they start to do? Well, they started to produce something called Super Tuscans. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about Super Tuscans because we're going to be doing Super Tuscans next or soon. Guys, I dropped the most I've ever dropped on a bottle of wine in the store today to get this stuff for you. I got a Tinginello, all right, $140 bottle of wine. It's called Super Tuscan. Basically what happened in the 1980s is they said, your regulations are totally shit. And so we are going to do whatever we want with the wine, and we're going to call it table wine. We're going to say, screw you to all the different regulations. It's $140. You guys are going to see it in a couple periscopes. So, yeah, I've bought, plenty of $50, $60 bottles, not a lot, but I've bought them. And I've even bought, close to 90, but I've never crossed the triple digit threshold. But I figured, you know what? If we're going to do this right, let's just do it. So I got a Bulgari, which is similar, and that was $35. And then I got the Tinginello. But anyway, Super Tuscans became very big. And so basically they were having this big problem that then the best producers in Tuscany were not even producing classic Tuscan wine. So they improved the regulations, and they separated the old Tuscan zone into a place called Chianti Classico. And Chianti Classico has stricter regulations. Okay, it's 80% Sangiovese versus 70%, and can't use any white wines and has to be aged. All right. So regular Chianti, it's available 6 months after bottling, whereas regular Chianti is a couple more months. So we have today, because I wanted to see the difference between all this stuff. We have a Chianti Reserva, so it has a little bit of age on it. We have a Chianti Classico Reserva, but we also have a Chianti Rufina. And so out of all these areas that they added, okay, most of these are all, worthless little shits, nothing special, whatever. These places, they're not worth anything. Montalbano, Floriantini, these are nothing special. Chianti Rufina, though, is actually very, very good because it has a little corridor you can see here in the Apennines, and it gets sea air as a result. And so it gets a nice cooling. And so it's actually very similar to Chianti Classico in quality. And there's another area which you may have seen, Chianti Colli Senese, which is also quite good. I'm not sure if I got one of these, though, just because it's more similar. It's just like a little bit higher up than basic Chianti. All right. So we're doing Chianti Classico, Chianti, and Chianti Rufina, all from the same producer and similar years. I guess I could not get a 2016 for Chianti Classico. So let's try it out, guys. Let's try it out. Let's see how they are. So, not getting a ton with this. It's just kind of like it's like just like chewy red fruit. Like if you were to bite into like a blackberry or something, I guess. I don't know if blackberry is the right word for it. Like a black currant would be better. It tastes a lot like currants. It does not have to have a rooster on the bottle. I don't actually remember what the story is with the rooster. I have heard that story before, and it's connected to Chianti. I don't know what the story is with it, but it's not required. It's just one of those stories that people use for branding with their stuff. Okay. All right. So this is why I'm happy to be doing these tastings, and for not only for you guys but for myself, because I have to be honest. Prior to brushing up on the research and prior to buying these bottles, I thought that really I was starting to mix up in my mind Chianti and Chianti Classico as being pretty much the same shit. Like, okay, Chianti Classico is better, but it's not really better. I have to tell you guys, and I do admit that perhaps the year has something to do with it, because I have to tell you, 2015 was a fucking awesome year. But guys, this wine, the Chianti Classico, even just smelling it, it is so much better. It is so much better than the Chianti. I mean, we know that just from smelling this is going to be a really good bottle of wine. And by the way, for those of you who are asking, there is a rooster here, so maybe it's true. Roy, I actually have had quite a bit of South African wine, and I had a lot of South African wine growing up. Haven't had so much recently. I remember doing a tasting with a Pinotage. It was a very interesting hybrid grape between Pinot Noir and I think Mourvedre, if I recall correctly. But basically, South Africa is known for Pinotage and Chenin Blanc. We're going to definitely get to it. In fact, I think that after we're done Italy, I'm going to step back from the big hitters, and I'm going to do maybe Austria and maybe South Africa and do a couple smaller countries to mix up the regions. France is also, France is a real serious undertaking. I mean, we've been going through Italy, and we've got easily another 2 to 3 weeks worth of Italian wine to go through. I just picked up 3 cases today to finish it off. And France is going to take us easily twice as long as Italy, or 50% as long. And France is expensive. I mean, I just dropped a bunch of cash on Italian wine. Italian wine is expensive, but French wine is really expensive. So maybe we'll take a break and we'll check out some of the other regions. But let's try this stuff. Man, this smells great. That's really good. Really incredible oak integration with this. it's just like caramel. So caramel. So much caramel and cherries and currants. Wow. Not even a comparison between these two wines. And I think that the big piece here is a lot of the oak treatment. The oak is really well done in the Chianti Classico. It's been aged perfectly. Let's try the Rufina. I feel like the Rufina is going to be the real interesting one to compare to regular Chianti, because the Rufina does not have the same criteria as the Classico, and it's also the same vintage as the regular Chianti. So it's definitely better than the first. The nose is much better. It almost has a little bit of a medicinal smell to it. Nah, I know that I appreciate that you guys enjoy the wine ritual, and Roy, I love to hear that you try to get these wines. I think it's part of the fun, but I think it's part of the fun because we do it with other stuff, right? And we have plenty of time to talk about wine. Spending 5 to 10 minutes, I think it's enough to talk about wine. I think it's enough. We'll lose people otherwise. I just want to go back between the Rufina and the original. Yeah, so the original, no real nose here. It's just like straight currants. Literally nothing to it. There's literally nothing to the Chianti. It's just a simple, basic table wine. The Rufina definitely has a little bit more elegance to it. And look, I'm not as familiar with the vineyards in Italy, but I know that in France, in the south of France, and I'm telling you, the weather in the south of France isn't going to be terribly different from Tuscany. 15 was a hot but incredible year, and 16 was a cool and incredible year. So they were both very good years. The way I've heard it sort of described when I was doing business in France was 15 was a very masculine vintage and 16 was a very feminine vintage. Right? This was very refined and delicate. This was very heavy and powerful. And I have to be honest, I generally prefer the 2016 in France. I like that finesse. And I can taste that between the 15 and 16 here. But the best, guys, best of these is the Chianti Classico. Number one by a long shot, 2, 3, pretty clear cut. And guys, just so you can see a more detailed map here. You can see Siena and you can see Florence. And this entire area right here is the Classico region. So I've traveled out throughout here when I was a kid, and there's Rufina. Really just beautiful place. Incredible. I mean, one of my big memories from when I was going over there was that we had this car, and we rented this car, and it just like reeked of cigarettes, right? Absolutely reeked of cigarettes. And I would take, before I left every morning, I would grab all this rosemary from outside of our villa, and I'd grab it and I'd put it in my hands so that I would breathe in the rosemary as we were driving, because the stale cigarette smell in that rental car was so bad. I must have been like 13 or something like that. But that was the first time I really had a feeling for wine. Stupid thing. Just trying to log into my computer. All right, cool. All right, let's check out some of these questions. You guys, we're probably not going to get through all of them, but if you guys are down with this, I might do this again. I'll do this again the next couple days. Although I think we're going to have some big days coming up. So, but we're going to try to keep these. I have about an hour and a half window. We eat at 6:30, but I'm going to try to do this sort of like 5 to 6:30 window. All right. So the first one was a question about. So this is actually a truncated question. So I'm going to fill in the pieces here. Basically, the question here was, should I become like Andrew Tate, right, of Wudang? Should I become like Andrew Tate? How do I get where they are? Should I try? Your work is very solid material and applicable to most men. I appreciate it. Okay, so you should not try to be like me, and you should not try to be like Tate. You should not try to be like anybody who is not you. Okay, now you can obviously look to people like me, and you can look to people like Tate, in order to help develop certain traits within yourself. And, you know, I think that everybody understands that Andrew Tate and I are not, very much the same, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn from both of us. I have friends, I have clients who have worked with both of us, and I think that we develop separate things in people, and that can be helpful. It can be helpful to have, to have mentors of different types. So, but I think that everybody has to really be cautious, like their mentor or like this other person. That's how a lot of marketing works, and a lot of the marketing will tell you, you suck, you're not good at who you are. You need to become more like me. And if you become more like me, then you're going to get what you're looking for. And that's all bullshit, guys. All bullshit. Doesn't work that way in practice. You will do that, and if you ever hope to reach your potential, you will outgrow that. Because and when you're starting off, it's natural. When you're starting off, it's natural because the reality is that you might actually suck. You might actually suck when you're starting off. And it's natural then, when you at least have that acceptance that you suck and you need to change, to be like, well, maybe I'll be like somebody else. But you don't want to put that stuff on a pedestal. If you're going to do that, like, move through it quickly, and, understand that you are only ever going to be happy by being your best self. And you can't become your best self looking to somebody else. You will fall out of alignment, and you will fall into unhappiness, and you will start to make decisions that don't fulfill you. So, just to really quickly answer this question here, because, guys, we actually send me the questions beforehand. I'll answer these questions at the end if there's time, but send me questions beforehand because there's a list. But just to say, is it safe to date with the pandemic going on? I mean, the pandemic is really, as far as I'm concerned, not a big deal. You do what you feel comfortable with. What's not safe is that you're going to have crazy women who are going to tell you that they're afraid of this stuff, and then you're going to be stuck on video dates with them. And just to give you a little bit of quick advice with that, my recommendation, if you do sort of virtual date with a girl, is to keep it very short. And I would recommend even do something during it. So, like, call her on the fly, call her when you're cooking, keep it short and sweet, just give some energy and make it feel casual, do a lot of assume rapport, and then move it to a physical date. If she still won't do a physical date, then just be like, cool, I'll see you later. Like, whenever you're feeling comfortable, maybe, you can hit me up. You have my number. Don't waste time with these girls. And I'm telling you, doing like hour-long chats over Skype with strangers is a really fucking boring thing to do, that you just don't do it. Just don't do it. All right. All right. Hey, Pat, could you address the importance of one sign and how important it is to read about the traits, or if this doesn't matter at all? Okay. So I am not an astrologer. If you want to if you want to get astrology advice with dating, you can check out Paul Publisher. He'll give you some perspective there. There's a lot of people who really swear by dating based on astrology. I have to tell you that I am not a big fan, and here's why. I think whether it's astrology or whether it's MBTI, I think that when you start to use some sort of external system to determine who you're going to date, then you're out of alignment, because now you're starting to use your head to say this should work. And it's very easy to take things like MBTI or astrology and to impress your own biases onto them to try to force a connection with somebody else. Okay. And yeah, of course, you can go to somebody objective and they could tell you one way or another. But I don't like using this sort of head-centered approach. You are attracted to somebody, and then you find yourself wanting to spend more time with them, and then you start to get together. Then I think that there's value in whether it's MBTI or astrology, because then you can start to see, okay, so what's the deal with us? Like, I understand how my wife and I have a complementary astrological dynamic with each other. However, I did not choose her based on that. And it was more just a way to help smooth over communication patterns and to understand some of the places that she comes from, and also understanding, places of connection, places of conflict, um, you know, understanding potential family development down the future. We have very high fertility apparently to our chart, and based on how quickly she got pregnant, that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, just to make that point, I would not do it personally. Some people have said, I actually was asked today in a group chat. They asked me if I was going to get into that stuff with my dating things, and it's possible, but if I know anything about astrology, I know it's complicated, and I don't think I personally have the bandwidth to even pretend to have mastery. But maybe I'll get in at least some basic understanding. No, I have to be honest. I listen to Paul, and I'm like, he tells me all the detail stuff, and I'm like, so, what is it? I still don't really know. I still haven't learned it. So, all right. Next question. Hey, Pat, I just had a talk with a girl I've been talking to for a couple of months. Things were perfect. She was very sweet, submissive, super into me up until the very end when she wouldn't agree to not get with other guys when we left school for break, telling me she just wasn't ready for a relationship. What do you think this means, and how should I handle it? I appreciate your feedback. Okay, so there's an update here. A little further background info to paint you a better picture for when you do answer. Like I said from the start, she was super into me. She's come knocking to my door all the time, cherished my affection, etc. This carried on throughout the majority of the semester. I then noticed a shift for the last week or two. She became more detached, not knocking as often and not cherishing my affection nearly as much. This carried on until she had to suddenly leave because of COVID. Okay. So I'm not getting a lot here from about what he was doing, but I can tell you this. All right, a couple months this was going on. I'm making some inferences here because again, you haven't told me what you were doing. The only thing that you told me you did is that she said she wouldn't agree not to get with other guys when we left school for break, which means that you asked her not to get with other guys while you were gone. And from the phrasing of this question, it makes it seem to me like, especially because the last 2 weeks she started to pull back a bit. It makes it seem to me like you were getting a little bit more invested than she was. You were starting to fall into this, and then you started to make demands and stuff like, well, I don't want you to see anybody else. I don't want you. And that need was building for a while in a sub communication, and then when you asked her that, she was already out of pocket. Right, she was already out of pocket. Now, as you guys know, I am not one of these black and white red pill guys who says you cannot, don't ever start the relationship. Okay, don't ever be the one who says I want to be in a relationship. I don't actually agree that that's the best way to start a healthy relationship necessarily. However, I think the man should lead. However, it's good advice because of situations like this where guys don't understand when they're out of pocket. And when they're out of pocket, you do not ever want to ask for a relationship. It's a death sentence. If she is not really into you, like I'm all about you ask her to be your girlfriend when she's like about bursting from the tension of wanting to be with you and not sure if you want it. That to me is like perfect escalation. Okay, high level romance. If you don't, if you're out of pocket and you're starting to become a little bit needy, and she's pulling back, and you say, "Hey, don't hook up with anybody else when we're over, gone over break," then you have just killed the relationship. You've killed whatever you had. So that's what happens. I'm sorry to hear about it, but it's one of those things. This is girl game, guys. She was making you feel as if she was obsessed with you. And so you began to catch feelings thinking you had all this power, and then just like that, the power gets pulled away. You gotta watch out for girl game, right? You gotta watch out for it. It's very, very sneaky at making our ego feel really big, and then we get attached to the ego validation. All right, next question. Hi, Pat. 21 years old and went through a breakup recently. My girlfriend broke up with me due to not following through with promises I had made her a while ago that I would essentially get my life together, driver's license, college, and real life job, which is something I planned on doing. Instead of following through with my word this year, I became fixated on fixing my mental health, anxiety, although I have zero excuse for not following through with what I told her I'd do. After the breakup had occurred, I apologized and told her I did the things I promised her I'd do, and she said, I wish you'd cared when it mattered, and unfollowed me from all social media. I did the surface level fix, following through with my word, albeit later on, and tried to talk to her about the deeper issue of trust being broken. She told me she's numb hurt and she doesn't know what's real with me anymore, and nothing really feels real anymore. The obvious advice here would be to continue focusing on myself, which is what I had always been doing regardless, but I still want her back somehow. She had been a great girlfriend for me during the relationship, and instead I took her for granted by not following through with my word. We even had plans to live with each other next year, and I feel like she couldn't see me as trustworthy, reliable anymore. All right, my young Padawan. I love these kind of questions. They're super practical. So, look, this is a classic comfort desire issue. All right? You promised her things, you didn't follow through with it. That was a comfort issue. There's also aspects of desire with this too, because some of these things were, it sounds like you were putting them off, right? So she may have started to feel like you weren't present. You're dealing with your headspace. You were dealing with anxiety, which is fine. You can do that. But here's the deal. You went and apologized, and now everything you're doing since the breakup has been qualifying yourself to her. Like, hey, I've now like fixed all these things. Like, I did everything you wanted me to do. Now you want me now you want me back. Look, when a girl wants you to do something, okay, that are important things for you as a man, not just like bullshit ego stuff, but she wants you to get your shit together, you should listen to it. However, if you don't listen to it, do not go to her with, little award saying, hey, look, I did it. Do not fucking do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's when you just do that stuff, and then you reach back out to her. And you check in and you see what's going on. And that stuff is all sort of ancillary things. And she's like, oh, what's going on? You're like, oh yeah, like working here now, blah, blah. So then it's all sub-communicated that you've been dealing with these things. And you focus on desire. All this stuff she keeps saying, like, I don't trust you. I wish you cared when it mattered. Nothing feels real anymore. It's all bullshit. She's trying to tell you that the issue is comfort, but the issue is actually desire. The issue is that you're qualifying yourself to her. And I know you want her back, but the reality is that she unfollowed you on everything. I mean, that's clear desire issue. The reality is that if you want to get her back, you just say, okay, and you move on. And then go on social media and start posting your best life, man. Start posting your best life. And maybe a good like she says, nothing feels real anymore. How do I know I can trust you? Just like, you don't. So if you don't trust me, then see ya. And then she's gonna, maybe she comes back. But you know what? I think that if you start to do this stuff and you start to live your best life and start to show it, when she does come back, you'll probably not really care anymore. Because you'll probably be like, fuck you. Oh, now you want me because I don't care. It's always annoying when girls do that, but that's how girls are. So never, ever qualify yourself to a girl. Never, ever, ever, ever qualify yourself to a girl. You can tell a girl that you changed. That's about as far as you can go. And that's pushing it. It's better to convey it implicitly, but you can even tell her that you've done some stuff, but you never, ever push for that. You never, ever push. And really, it's much better just to have it be implicit. You want her to find out about it on her own. You don't want to tell her. But if you tell her once, and then if she says, I don't know, it's too late, you're like, okay. Sorry, sucks, I guess. Too late. See you later. Wait. But it's not too late. I just wish that you had, that's how it happens. All right. Hey man, I was gonna ask a question about dating. I just came back from a date with a girl. The texts leading up to the date were great and built some sexual tension. We had mad chemistry. We held hands too, but didn't make out. And when I went to touch her leg, she was hesitant, but she let me touch and caress a few seconds later. Maybe I'm looking too far into it and overthinking it, but this was our first date together. She's probably trying to get comfortable. Thank you in advance, man. Okay, I'm gonna reread this because I'm a little confused. Came back from a date with a girl. Texts leading up were great. Sexual tension. Had mad chemistry. Held hands. Didn't make out. When I went to touch her leg, she was hesitant, but she let me touch and caress a few seconds later. Maybe I'm looking too far into it and overthinking, but this was our first date together. She's probably trying to get comfortable. Look, I have to be honest, and I mean this with all love and respect. I don't quite understand the question. It sounds like, yeah, she is trying, she didn't want to fuck on the first date. A lot of girls don't want to fuck on the first date. I think it's frankly a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Um, she lets you get a little physical with her, a little, outside the pants, whatever. You are overthinking it. You are overthinking it. You should be just moving on till the next date and keep, escalate on the next date. And you shouldn't have any problem closing so long as you don't get too much in your headspace and too much trying to, trying to think so much about, she's a girl who's on a date with the guy she likes, but she doesn't want to put out too early. That's all it is. And honestly, this isn't like it's like the third or fourth date that she's doing this. The first date, it's pretty natural for a lot of girls to not. Some girls don't even. See, you say you didn't kiss. I don't even know. Did you try to kiss her? That's not clear from the question. If you tried to kiss her and she pulled back, then there's just maybe a little bit of maybe there's a little bit of a desire issue, but it seems like mostly, just see her on the next date, move it from there. Okay, here's a generic question. Best way to learn and improve game. Hey, what do you day gamers think here? Best way to learn and improve game. Best way to learn and improve game. Roy, the COVID cabal's in about 15 minutes. Actually, it's been about 10 minutes. Best way to learn and improve game. Yeah, it's do more sets. Thank you. Yeah, that's the best way to learn. Hey, you can get my masterclass. It'll help. But even with my masterclass, if you're not out there taking action, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So the best way to learn and improve anything is to do it. The best way to learn anything, there's two ways to learn, okay? You get somebody, you get a teacher, a mentor, and then you go out and you practice, you take action. That's how you learn anything. Anything. Okay? So if you want to do cold approach, do cold approach. If you want to do other sorts of social circle, do social circle. Yeah, I've done that before, by the way. I gave a friend about $500, and I had to do 20 approaches. And man, I swear to God, I had 10 approaches to do in the last 20 minutes, and I did it. I did the first 10 approaches in the first hour in like 45 minutes, and I did the last 20 approaches in the last 15 minutes. It's crazy. It's crazy what that kind of pressure can do, and it was exhilarating. That was exhilarating. It was like everything changed after that. You don't have to do it all the time. Even just doing it once can be a great way to break yourself out. When did I start writing? I've written for a long time. When I was in middle school, I tried to write a fantasy novel. It's terrible. It was terrible writing. Oh my God. It's the same thing. You get good from practicing. But thank you for that. All right, let me so we're not gonna be able to get to every question here. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we're gonna do one more question. And we're gonna tackle the other ones on the next day in relationship periscope. Have you read C.S. Lewis' Till We Have Faces? If so, how do you think his meditations on love as potential self-corrupting force relate to the manosphere concept of frame? The story is a study on sisterly maternal love, a kind of dark queen motif, but I see it applying easily to the desperate relationships so many lonely people form these days. The Great Divorce has some great things to say on this as well, as it relates to love being a force that can trap us in hell. If you haven't read it, I would ask you if you sense a connection between the corrupting love espoused by the radical left that claims they want to take care of everyone by suffocating them under the best intentions, and the previously mentioned obsessive and immature romantic relationships that seem all too commonplace these days. Yeah, great question. I mean, obviously, very intelligent person. It's an intellectual question, but so here's the sort of my take on this. The sort of dark queen motif, right? The dark queen, the dark mother, okay, and the dark mother is basically the distorted feminine that seeks to basically suffocate and subsume people into like a blob, you could say. You know, you could say that the masculine seeks independence and the feminine seeks connection, right? Freedom versus connection. And of course, the reality is that a healthy relationship has both, right? A healthy relationship is independent individuals who are also connected and able to be with each other. So that's the idea of interdependence, which is that we are together and we are separate. Now, the dark queen motif says is a codependence. And so what happens is that if you have a lack of masculine energy, which means you have a lack of an energy that develops your sense of agency and independence, then what you get is this this dark feminine comes into the picture more and more. And really, the dark feminine also crowds out the masculine. And so what the dark feminine wants is to not have the child leave home. Doesn't want the person to develop. So the person then does not develop a sense of self. They're bonded to their mother, whether it's a male or a female, boy or girl. And then, of course, because they have no love of self, because all their sense of self comes from externalized affection, then they throw that into any relationship they have, where they're looking for the other relationship to provide that sort of love that they can't meet internally. So all the immature romantic relationships that are common are a product of that. No doubt. No doubt. Men who have a strong masculine influence may have a hard time in relationships if they have an issue with their mother, but they are not going to enter into this sort of pathetic, very immature, sort of obsessive relationship. And you notice, by the way, that the people who tend to get into those sort of I don't have a sense of self and I'm obsessed with you relationship tend to be young, under 20, right? Under 20. And that's because they haven't developed their sense of self. They haven't developed their sense of self. So it's much, much more likely for a young person who falls in love, a teenager, to really get into that immature dynamic. And the fact that it's happening for people outside of their teenage years is kind of sad, to be honest. But that's a product of this coddling that comes from the dark mother. So very interesting. C.S. Lewis is obviously great, super intelligent, and really great spiritual teacher too. I've really loved Mere Christianity. And I next to my list actually is the Screw Tape Letters, but I haven't had a lot of time to read recently, guys. So, all right, so we're gonna tackle the rest of these ones. Hopefully, I mean, I'll actually try to do it tomorrow if we have time, but we're gonna see if we have time because we're going to Cova Gabal next. I will see you guys in just a minute.